The way my eyes like popped out of my skull. Insane cliffhanger. Join the ranks of Elsie Silver girls. I just don't recommend this one. This was, in fact, my first 5-star read in months. Summer might technically be over, but here in Florida, it's still 1,000 degrees. So I am moving on to fall in spirit. I read 18 books between July and September, romances, horrors, fantasies, thrillers, and it was a roller coaster. Some of these blew my mind. Others made me question my book choosing abilities. I thought I had that radar pretty honed in, but I guess we can still be humbled sometimes. We're talking cowboys, vampires, demons, and one of the most insane sci-fi plot twists I've read in years. So grab a bev, settle in, and let's talk about what I loved, what I did not, and which books are officially living rent-free in my brain. Now, before we jump in, here are some stats. 10 romance, 3 fantasy, 2 horror, mystery, thriller books. I kind of grouped it all together. 1 historical fiction, 1 general fiction, and 1 science fiction. Total pages read was 7,850. Whoa. Average star rating was a 3.84. I only had 1 5-star read, so my average is a little low this time around. I had 2 library checkouts. I read 2 books from my physical TBR. I read 2 ebooks that I owned. They were actually my husband's. I just borrowed his Kindle. 11 Kindle Unlimited downloads, which contributed to me reading 14 books in the month of July. 1 ARC and 1 DNF. Yeah. I typically don't have DNFs to talk about because I've gotten pretty good at determining my moods for books. I'm definitely what the bookish community dubs a mood reader. So I picked up Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Canas at the beginning of August because it was a book club pick over on Fable. But yeah, August was a little overwhelming for me. I was doing last minute shopping and prep for a trip to Scotland. My work started ramping up again. We're in our busy season pretty much until May. And just regular life stuff going on. I actually only finished 1 book in August and it was not this one. I don't have much to say except right book, wrong time. I got only about 30 pages in, and this book is a masterclass on how to capture your reader in the first 30 pages. There was a lot packed into those first 2 chapters that I was excited to sink my teeth into during the rest of the book, but alas, right book, wrong time. I'll probably pick it up later down the line. All right, now on to the books that I actually finished. It's 1348 and Europe is in ruins. The Black Death has left entire villages silent, emptied of life. In one of these places, a disgraced knight named Thomas stumbles upon a lone survivor, a young girl hauntingly calm in the face of so much death. She tells him the plague is only a part of something far darker, that Lucifer's fallen angels have risen and humanity is now caught in the crossfire of a new war between heaven and hell. Thomas doesn't know if she's delusional or divinely chosen, but against his better judgment, he agrees to guide her to Avignon, where she insists her mission lies. Their journey drags them through a nightmare landscape of sin, violence, and despair, where demons walk among the living. As the truth of the girl's nature unfolds, Thomas's beliefs are challenged, and he has to make a choice. Keep going down the path he's been on for years, or fight for redemption. Doesn't that sound like fun? This is a road trip biblical horror story through medieval France. It has great pacing and a memorable cast of characters. Thomas, Delphine, the girl, and a third member of their trio who I will not disclose because it's a little bit of a spoiler. All 3 of them make up a very interesting trio dynamic. They argue, they challenge each other, they disagree on things, but they also come together to work towards a bigger goal, learning and teaching each other different life lessons in the process. And as I mentioned, great pacing. I'm not really versed in the road trip novel subgenre trope, whatever it is. At least no other book comes to mind. Usually the road trip storyline of any book I read is a short part of it, like in a fantasy novel where the characters have to journey from one city to another. That's it. What makes this such a fun, and I use the word fun lightly, journey is that it's broken up by different towns that the characters stumble upon. The random characters they happen upon on the road. The town they see in the distance that they decide to stop in on. It breaks up the monotony of the journey journey into these crazy episodes where they're faced with different villains and obstacles they have to overcome. And these are all obstacles that are being thrown in their path to stop them from getting to their final destination. Someone clearly doesn't want them surviving this journey. This is a story that benefits from thinking a little deeper, reading between the lines and beyond the text. There's nothing unattainable in the story. I think Christopher Buehlman does a really good job of pretty much handing you the moral of the story, but the way he does it is cool. I'd say look out for themes of faith and religion, obviously, forgiveness, redemption, the human capacity for both really good and really depraved things. There's a lot of really strong symbols and metaphors. I especially enjoyed the symbol of Thomas's suit of armor. Look out for how he talks and feels about it in the beginning versus the end. The journey that he goes on is very much reflected in his suit of armor. Thomas, I would say, is one of the most memorable characters I've read as of late. He's just very real, very flawed, and has a dry sense of humor. He could walk off the pages of this book and into reality because of how real he felt. There's a really great climax and resolution, and the way it ends felt like a satisfying conclusion to the very heart-wrenching journey you have to go on to get there. As a final note, I will give some trigger warnings. I'll pop those up on the screen. When I went to leave my review, it seemed like other reviewers got really hung up on some of the more time period accurate parts, misogyny, homophobia, PDF file behavior, to name a few. And an argument can be made for whether those things were necessary to include in the story or not. I'm of the mind that the story wouldn't be historical fiction if it didn't, you know? Part of the horror of this story comes from the way humanity was as a society in the medieval ages. Completely erasing that part of history makes it seem like no work has been done to improve societal standards, like we haven't come a long way in hundreds of years, and I feel like that does more harm than good. I'm of the mind that if you're going to read historic accounts or historical fiction, you have to be prepared to read about and be able to have conversations about the things that happen in history, including the more unsavory parts. That's enough of that. We're jumping to the other end of the spectrum now with some more lighthearted reads. But if you're enjoying this so far, go ahead and hit subscribe so you don't miss my next reading wrap-up. And if you want to be friends and chat about books, I hang out over on TikTok and Fable. Same handles as on here, biblichorandmint. I'm currently running a streak challenge for the month of October, and I'm making that everybody else's problem. So feel free to check out those channels for updates after you finish this video. I got a 3-month free trial of Kindle Unlimited on Prime Day and decided to take advantage by reading all of the Chestnut Springs series. I finished the whole series in less than a week. Train, sleep, bus,
club, another club, plane, next place. No sleep.
Chestnut Springs is a contemporary romance series. Each book is a standalone romance, so you technically don't have to read all of them or even read them in order, but I find that you get the most out of these types of series when you do. The whole standalone thing is a trap, honestly, because the only time I've ever read one book in a standalone series, it was the third book in a series, and I felt like I was missing 30% of the overall story. So yeah, I just read all the books in order. I'm curious, if you read standalones, do you read them as standalones out of order? Do you know someone that does? Because it would actually blow my mind if I was in the minority here. I feel like reading all of the books in order is just the way to do it. Okay, tangent over. So this series is tied together through recurring characters, mainly the Eaton family, who are all the male main characters. Also, because it all takes place in a small town in Alberta, Canada, Chestnut Springs. This is my very first cowboy rancher romance. I didn't realize it until I had fully finished the series that was the case. And I'll say the cowboy vibes were the strongest in the first book. Flawless. Our main couple in Flawless are Rhett, who is a bull rider facing a major PR blowout that threatens his entire career, and Summer, who is assigned to help him clean up his image. She's just a girl trying to do her job, and if she succeeds at this assignment, she's been promised bigger accounts. Rhett, meanwhile, is pitching a fit at the fact that he's being babysat. But hey, of course she's like the most beautiful, intriguing, stunning, intelligent, amazing woman he's ever met. And of course he's made assumptions about her that she systematically shatters, so he gets all heart eyes about her. Yeah. But the catch to all this is that Summer is off limits because she's his agent's daughter. Tea. I read the book in one sitting. That's just my relationship with contemporary romances like this. I get so insanely invested that it's impossible to put the book down. So I think I started this at like 9 p.m. and didn't put it down until 3 a.m. Yep. And the kicker was that it took me forever to fall asleep because the ending of this book, oh my gosh, epic romance ending. It felt kind of like watching one of those early 2000s romance movies when there's only like 5 minutes left of the movie and the girl is leaving. She's at like the airport or whatever, and the guy is tearing across the city to get to her. That level of high octane romance finale, yeah, that's pretty much how this ended. That airport analogy didn't spoil anything, by the way. It's just the feeling that was pretty much identical to how I felt reading the ending of Flawless. Adrenaline fully coursing through my veins. Sleep nowhere to be found. I would have totally started the next book if it hadn't been for the fact that my eyes were burning from staring at my Kindle like this for 6 hours straight. And yeah, the rest of the series had me in as much of a chokehold. Oh, each book explores a different trope. That's worth noting. Different tropes and different relationship dynamics, like friends to lovers, single parent, second chance, stuff like that. I'm purposely keeping this vague because I went into it kind of blind, and I think that's one of the best ways to go into books like these. I was pleasantly surprised by the relationships that developed and the different tropes that were explored. There were some twists that straight up blindsided me, and that was just a lot of fun. Those are the moments I live for, and I don't want to take that away from you. But yeah, if you've read the series, I want you to know that Powerless and Hopeless were my least favorite in the series. I still finished them both in one sitting, so not my faves, but I still enjoyed them a ton. Flawless, Heartless, and Reckless are my top 3. My favorite really depends on the day. I didn't think I would enjoy Reckless as much as I did. The trope explored there is not one I really read or one I seek out at all, but damn, Elsie Silver wrote that thing. She flipped me. I can see the appeal of the trope now. Heartless had me actually laughing out loud by page 10, and the story overall was just very touching. And yeah, you know how I feel about Flawless. The whole trust conversation between Rhett and Summer, I'd never seen that theme explored in that way. Chef's kiss. I'd read the series all over again right now. And now I'm gonna keep talking about Elsie Silver. LOL. I remember finishing Chestnut Springs and doing a little bit of a gut check, like, am I through? Am I satiated? And I was not. I jumped right into the next series, the Rose Hill series. That one takes place in, you guessed it, Rose Hill, another small town in Canada with more country, mountain country vibes. The common denominator in this series is that the male love interests are all part of the same bowling team. Spoiler alert, they aren't very good at bowling. It's more of a for fun thing, but as I was reading, I was like, okay, the characters in Chestnut Springs all come together because of the Eaton family. Characters in Rose Hill all come together because of a bowling team. It's quirky and fun and a good time. The first book, Wild Love, is about Ford and Rosie. We meet Ford in Chestnut Springs because he's one of the brothers to one of the characters. So we see him through other people's eyes, through other people's point of view. And in Wild Love, we get to see him in a new light from his own point of view. He's moved to a new town, started a new business venture, and has found out that he's the biological dad to a 12-year-old. Not clickbait. Rosie is his childhood frenemy. He's his best friend's little sister, and they had an interesting relationship growing up. You know, the usual pick on each other because they were low-key crushing on each other dynamic. Ford and Rosie find themselves back in Rose Hill and in each other's presence for the first time in like a decade. Rosie is in need of a job, and Ford is in need of a business manager for his new business. Totally meant to be. The rest is history. So yeah, the Rose Hill series features another fun cast of characters that we get to know in depth. Elsie Silver hits all the right beats in both of these series. Small towns that make you feel like you can actually move to, with quaint small businesses and quirky locals that slow release town lore to you. Characters that have great arcs. She does a good job of balancing heavy emotional moments with more lighthearted moments of connection. And she writes tropes with very satisfying payoffs. It doesn't feel like she's packing tropes in for the sake of it. It feels like she's leveraging them to tell a solid story. One thing I will say, which I am just remembering, the only critique I have of like 7.5 of these books is that the moment where the two characters finally come together feels slightly forced, like a little out of left field. I can't exactly put my finger on it. Like, I don't know if the fix would have been more time developing relationship. I'm not 100% sure. I just remember consistently feeling like, oh, okay, that's happening now, right? She seems to have hit her stride with that though. Wildside felt like a much more natural progression, and Wildcard felt pretty much seamless, to the point where I forgot this critique. That's how seamless it felt. Anyways, I have joined the ranks of Elsie Silver girls. I honestly never thought I'd get around to these books, but actually, never say never. Actually, never say never. We're back in the Empire of Canem for the sequel to The Tainted Cup. And man, was this good. Some of my favorite things about The Tainted Cup were its lush setting and extensive world building, the relationship between our two main characters, Anna and Din, and of course, the mystery at the core of the story. Robert Jackson Bennett takes all those points and keeps building on them in A Drop of Corruption. This story takes place in the canton of Yarrowdale, which is even more dangerous than the settings explored in the first book. The core mystery here is that a treasury officer has gone missing, or more like disappeared. Gone from his room, the doors were bolted, windows sealed, guards everywhere. It shouldn't seem possible, but here we are. To figure it out, the Empire brings in Anna de Labra, their most brilliant and also most unpredictable investigator. She's as sharp and eccentric as ever, and alongside her is Dinius Cole, her assistant, who often feels like the grounded voice of reason in all her chaos. Actually, just kidding. Actually, Din starts to get a little chaotic here too, which was very interesting character development on his part. Okay, so they realize that this isn't just a disappearance, it's a murder, and not just any murder, but one that looks like the tip of the iceberg in a much larger game. Their opponent can pass through warded doors like a ghost and always seems to be one step ahead. And the stakes are really set when they figure out that the culprit behind all this is actually after the Shroud, a high security offshore compound where the Empire studies the Titan blood that powers its magic. So if that falls, the Empire falls. If the Tainted Cup was a little baby tree just establishing its roots, Drop of Corruption is an old-ass oak tree. Thick trunk, long, twisting branches, and an equally twisted root system. You could be sitting on one of the branches close to the ground thinking that you see the whole tree, but then the light shifts and you realize there's a whole canopy that you might never get to. Yeah, it's sprawling. The mystery is so tangled that at one point Anna goes to really extreme lengths to see the big picture, and that was a huge character moment scene for her and for Din. I'm excited to see where the third book takes us, both story-wise and within the Empire, because now we've reached a point where there is very clearly a bigger conspiracy happening within the Empire. And of course, Anna and Din, they have no choice but to Sherlock and Watson their way through it. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the series. If you're into Sherlock Holmes and if you're into fantasy, this is a series that I recommend for you. This was an absolute mindfuck of a book. Editing Maria, bleep that out because I've been sitting here trying to figure out another word that could sum it up concisely, and I can't. Dark Matter follows main character Jason Dessen. He's walking home one night when he's abducted, taken to a building out in the middle of nowhere, and knocked unconscious. When he wakes up, he's in a different place, in a room surrounded by people in hazmat suits, and they all seem to know who he is. In this world he's woken up to, Jason's life is not one he knows. His wife is not his wife, his son was never born, and Jason is not an ordinary college physics professor, but a celebrated genius who has achieved something pretty close to impossible. This was very twisty. When you think you know what's going on, you suddenly realize you have no idea what's going on, and that Blake Crouch is running circles around you. But I like these kinds of books, the books that really humble me and make me question all I think I know about physics and space-time, the books that go, hey, you might have gotten an A in physics in high school and you might have actually enjoyed that class a lot, but there's a whole world of scientific theory out there that you are baby to. And that's okay, because that makes for a great book. Definitely had some life lessons in there about not taking your life for granted, not living in the past, not thinking about, what would have happened if I had taken this path instead of this path. Because according to science, one decision or the other probably wouldn't lead to the thing that you would assume it would lead to. So yeah, that was fascinating. For those of you who have read the book, only thing I'm gonna say, chat room scene. The way my eyes popped out of my skull when he opened that chat room. Oh my gosh. Ooh, I get chills still, thinking about it. It's crazy. Anyways, on to the next. Graveyard Shift is a short story about 100 pages and some change, and if you've read a handful of short stories before, you might understand what I mean when I say that reading a short story is sometimes reading for the sake of reading. 9 times out of 10, short stories feel like they could be better if they were just longer, if they were a novel, if you will, but alas, that defeats the purpose of a short story. Graveyard Shift follows a ragtag group of people who are drawn together by a smoking habit and insomnia. They all go to smoke at the same cemetery in the evenings. Hashtag squad goals, I guess. This story takes place over the course of one of their evenings, and the group gets caught up in a mystery. They do a little bit of sleuthing, some weird stuff happens, people are not what they seem. The end. Abrupt. That was it. I liked it just fine. I took this on a weekend trip with me and finished reading it on a porch in a cabin in the Georgia mountains. It was a great setting for it. And it gets a 3 stars because I neither loved nor hated it. It was just a story to read. If you want a short read with a funky cast of characters and a mystery, Graveyard Shift might be a good option. Give it a look. Actually, one last note on this. I feel like the story would be stronger as part of a collection of short stories from the author or even an anthology. I love a good anthology. The author's note at the beginning of Graveyard Shift mentioned that the story was inspired by the author's struggle with insomnia and how the world takes on a different vibe at night, one that only insomniacs are privy to. And I thought that was a really interesting concept. So if there was an anthology centered around that topic, or even just a collection of short stories written by Emma Rio that this could be included in, I think it would just make it stronger. Would you be mad at me if I made this review less than a minute long? I keep going down a really negative thought spiral. I just don't recommend this one. It was entertaining and I finished it in 2 or 3 reading sessions, but that was pretty much just motivated by the fact that I wanted to finish the book, and I was pretty disappointed with it as a whole. Now, I don't want to discredit the fact that this book covers some really heavy themes that would be insane spoilers if I mentioned them, and talking about those issues is important. But purely judging this as a mystery thriller, meh. It's the first time I've thought, this character isn't realistic. And I want to say 90% of the plot twists were telegraphed. I could see them coming from 100 pages away. Also, this little teaser at the cover, from behind closed doors she sees everything, an actual freaking lie. Unless she is me, because I saw everything and I saw everything coming. But our main character, Millie, spoiler alert, she sees nothing. Spoiler alert, she's so lost. Bless her freaking heart. There are plenty of fish in the sea, and by fish I mean mystery thriller books that are better than The Housemaid, and by the sea I mean the whole world. I said what I said. This book held a mirror up to me. Okay, not because I felt any sort of kinship with the main character or the story, we'll get into that soon enough, but this book really proved to me that I need to up my game when it comes to general fiction. I used to enjoy weird books a lot more, and I say weird because that's the lovingly assigned label the internet has started calling literary general fiction books that aren't as straightforward as the typical contemporary book. I used to enjoy books that were more metaphorical, that had much more open interpretation, a lot more. And when I think think back to the me that enjoyed those novels, it was the me that was taking literature classes in high school when I had more of a drive, and by drive I mean the need to get an A, to pick apart books chapter by chapter and really understand them, or at least to be able to form a more personal, informed opinion around them. I've sort of lost that practice, and it became very evident to me with this book. I didn't love this book. Let me start off with that. And the more I go back to it, the more I think, well, I didn't love it, but the story is very interesting. The guest follows Alex, a woman who moves through life actually going anywhere the wind takes her. At the beginning of the story, she's staying with an older man, Simon, at his summer home in the Hamptons when she makes a social no-no mistake at a dinner party. He sends her packing with a train ticket back into the city, but instead of getting on the train, Alex decides she'll stick around the neighborhood until Labor Day. Simon will be throwing his annual Labor Day party, so she just needs to survive the week until she can make an attempt to get back on his good graces. What follows is truly a story that feels like it was written without prior plot, and I don't say that to slight the story. Hey, I enjoy Stephen King, the no plot poster boy. The nature of our main character and her life is very go with the flow, so the things that would happen come up seemingly out of nowhere, and they felt like they really couldn't be predetermined by a plot. And it's messy. Alex is in constant survival mode, trying to get through her day-to-day, using all the grifting and conning tools she's put together since her youth. She goes in and out of people's lives throughout the week, leaving a trail of seemingly innocuous but very innocuous consequences. Consequences that we often don't see because Alex slips away before any consequence can actually touch her. I know Emma Cline did a good job here because not only did I feel for Alex's dilemma, I actually felt relief when she was able to get out of situations pretty much unscathed. And by the end of it, a small part of me wanted to believe that it would all work out for her, that she would be able to pull through. But then I would snap out of it and be like, no, I don't actually want her to get away with any of this. There's definitely a conversation to be had around this story, but I don't know how far that conversation can go besides self-sabotage bad. Actions have consequences. Comment down below if you've read this book and what you thought of it. I would love to dissect it a little more with people who have varying opinions on it. We're back in the land of Obetrace. We're back in this world for the third book in the Crowns of Nyaxia series. If you haven't gotten into the series, I highly recommend it. The Serpent and the Wings of Night and The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King is one of my favorite duologies. I feel like duologies are where it's at, but those two, the way the first book ends, insane cliffhanger, and the second book is just great. So I recommend it. This is, however, the time to skip to the next book review if you haven't gotten into that series, and the next book review is Wild Reverence. I will put the timestamp in the bar below or in the description, whichever one is easier for you. But yeah, spoilers ahead for this new duology. After the events of The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, Misha leaves the House of Night and goes on a soul-searching quest. Unfortunately, she does get captured by the House of Shadow, which the more I think about it, the more I'm like, how? Like, how did she get captured? I'm still wondering. That was kind of just like, she was already captured at the beginning of this book. So I was like, how did they find her, you know? But yeah, at the beginning of this book, she's about to be offed when Asar, the bastard prince of the House of Shadow, waltzes into her execution and is like, hey, I need her. Quote unquote, I need her. There is nothing romantic going on at this point. This just sets the standard for how intense it's going to be. So yeah, he saves her. And they go on this journey into the underworld for a secret mission he's been sent on. They face trials and monsters, and they have to work together to get to the other side of it all. Now, Misha, we know from the first installment of the books as Rain's faithful companion. She was usually the lighthearted, sunny character that would bring lightheartedness to certain dark beats of the first books in the series. And in this installment of the series, we're getting her point of view, and she's dealing with a lot of things internally and choosing this outwardly positive disposition to kind of distract others and herself from what's going on inside. But she's gonna have to deal with her trauma and the things she's been pushing down in order to make it out alive from the events in this book. Now, Asar in this book takes on the role of shepherding Misha through her journey. He has his own host of issues going on, but he definitely prioritized Misha, which, not gonna lie, I loved it. He definitely has a savior complex that he's gonna have to work on, but for the sake of Misha and her journey, I loved it. And Misha and Asar journey through the underworld on this mission that Asar needs to complete. He definitely puts on this front as like a grump who doesn't care about anybody and is riding solo through life, definitely lone wolf vibes. But there's definitely a moment where he realizes that without him, Misha doesn't really have the ability or the will to unlock her true potential. He kind of steps up, and I love that for this. I love it. I love it all. As Misha and Asar journey through the underworld on this mission that Asar needs to complete, we get a few cool battles, some interesting scenes between the two as they figure out that their magics complement each other, because duh, why wouldn't it? And the tension that runs through the whole story is addictive. I'm not talking about the romantic tension, but that was also great. I'm talking about the tension stemming from Misha not really knowing Asar's intentions in this mission and not fully trusting him for like 95% of the story, and the tension we get from knowing exactly what Misha's intentions are. Now, knowing that there's a second book following the couple, you can infer that they figure something out. But then you jump into the second book and there's a whole host of issues that needs to be worked through. Yeah, I've already started the second book. I'm like halfway through and it's been pretty good. By the time this video goes out, I will have finished The Fallen and The Kiss of Dusk. I'll let Editing Maria give a thumbs up or down for her experience with that one. Big shout out to Saturday Books and NetGalley for this digital arc. All opinions are my own, as always. This book, you guys, this book. After the Letters of Enchantment duology, I could not stop thinking about the divines in that world. Like, I adore Iris and Roman's story. I will ride or die for those two. But I was just craving more of the world's lore, more history, more of that rich Cambria lore. So when I found out that Wild Reverence was set centuries before Divine Rivals, yeah, immediately add to TBR. This story follows Matilda, a goddess born into the world under a total shroud of mystery. She's destined to become the Herald of Realms, and there's way more to her power than she or anybody realizes. And as she makes her way through this absolutely ruthless world, her journey ends up being just as much about self-discovery as it is about survival. The whole thing reads kind of like a fable. We follow her from birth through all these huge unexpected turns, and watching her grow into her power was so satisfying. Then we have Vincent Beckett, a mortal who first meets Matilda in a dream, because of course he does. From that point on, she becomes this symbol of hope for him, and when their paths finally cross, their connection is just, capital UGH. It's so good. It's tender and complicated and full of yearning, and the writing, phenomenal, lush, lyrical, and soaked in that flowery mysticism Rebecca Ross does so well. We get to explore all these stunning settings, from the foggy tunnels of Underling to the rolling hills of Skyward, and each place feels very distinct and alive. This was, in fact, my first 5-star read in months. Thank you, Rebecca Ross. You absolute rock star. I totally recommend reading this after you've read the Letters of Enchantment duology. And finally, another Ali Hazelwood book makes it into the wrap-up. She just has a direct connection to my brain and knows exactly what I want at all times, okay? It's kind of freaky at this point. This is not me complaining whatsoever. This book is the sequel to Not in Love, which I read last year. Problematic summer romance takes place on an island in Italy where Rue and Eli, the two main characters of Not in Love, are getting married. I could cry. I love them. I would say that Not in Love and Bride are like tied for my #1 favorites in Ali Hazelwood's catalog for now. I still haven't read all of her books, but I feel like they have staying power. We also get to see more of Rue and Eli's story, but we're actually following Maya now. Maya is Eli's sister, and she's been nursing a little bit of a crush for Eli's best friend and business partner, Connor, for a few years now. The problematic part of the summer romance is that there is a 15-year age gap between them. Yep. Connor is 38 and Maya is 23. I don't care about age gaps, to be honest with you. I definitely feel like there's a more nuanced conversation to be had around age gaps. Like, every relationship is very case by case. And that goes for anything, really, not just age. But that's the main point of conflict in this book. And by the end of it, I was actually tired of them being hung up on this one detail that was not actually an issue that needed to be tackled in this narrative. It's more of the surface level excuse for the bigger issue that needed to be tackled. But anyways, I really enjoyed Maya and Connor's chemistry. They have a few years of history prior to the events of this story that nobody besides them is in on. So seeing that development was sweet. And I also enjoyed seeing their relationship develop in present time. They go on a series of side quests to make sure that Rue and Eli's wedding week goes smoothly, and seeing them work so well as partners further solidified the WTF are you guys doing, just get together thoughts in my mind. I read this all during one travel day over to Scotland. Fun fact, Maya, main character, studied abroad at the University of Edinburgh. When I saw that in chapter 2, I was like, wow, meant to be reading this book while flying into Edinburgh. And those are all the books I read this summer. If you made it this far, we are kindred spirits. Let's stay connected in this crazy, crazy world. Don't forget to hit that like button and also subscribe. It helps more bookish people find this channel, and it means the world to me. You can also follow me over on Fable, where we can chat about books, or on TikTok for a silly, goofy time. I'll leave those links in the description below, but it's the same handle as this channel, biblichorandmint. See you next time. Happy reading.